Hello, I'm James Ezimoha. Welcome to Africa News. Here are your headlines. At least 15 people have died and dozens displaced in Guinea after weeks of heavy rains. Authorities in Nigeria revive abandoned rail lines in Plateau State to ease burden of commuting in the region. South Africa announces emergency measures to support exporters facing new 30% US tariff. The textile industry in Lesotho is reeling as a new 15% tariff from the US threatens its biggest export sector. While the rate is lower than the originally proposed 50%, officials warn it could still cripple the economy.
Donald Trump had threatened to impose a 50% tariff rate on tiny Lesotho, potentially decimating the textile industry on which the landlocked mountainous kingdom depends. So you might think that last week's decision to significantly lower that rate to 15% would be met with a sigh of relief. Instead, Lesotho's trade minister warns it might still not be enough to avoid a disaster.
For me, it's still like 50%. Because our people in the garment industry will not compete.
Moketi Shilile pointed to competition from Eswatini and Kenya, both of whom have lower US tariff rates at 10%.
And they are both in the same market as us. And it will be quite easy for the buyers to switch their allegiance to these two countries and place orders in these two countries.
The textile industry is Lesotho's biggest private employer and responsible for roughly 90% of manufacturing exports. It was also heavily dependent on the African Growth and Opportunities Act, or AGOA, which offered qualifying African nations duty-free access to the US market. However, under the tariff threats, many US importers have cancelled orders of Lesotho-produced textiles. Shilile said there are close to 12,000 jobs directly in the firing line and another 40,000 that depend on those 12,000. At a market in Lesotho's capital, Maseru, clothing vendor Hopalang Lebamang fears for his future. The knock-on effects of the tariffs will mean he has to inflate his prices, he says, and that will make them unaffordable for his clients. Lesotho's textile factories have in recent months indicated that they were searching for new markets. Shilile also said his government would continue to engage with the White House in the hope of having the tariff lowered.
In Nigeria's Plateau State, authorities have revived a long-abandoned rail line to ease financial burden of commuting. The move comes as fuel prices continue to rise following the end of petrol subsidies. With fares far cheaper than road travel, many residents are turning to trains in hopes for more affordable and reliable transportation.
Nigeria's Plateau State has relaunched an intra-city train line to offer cheaper public transport, as petrol prices surge following the federal government's 2023 removal of fuel subsidies. With bus fares rising by over 90%, transport officials say rail services are vital to ease the financial burden on residents. Commuters say the return of train service is timely.
The trains were active, but after some time, we didn't see them in motion. They were not operational, not until recently. And you can see that it is timely because we strongly believe that it will help people in their mobility, most especially with the present trend where the subsidy on fuel has been lifted and cost of transportation has become very, very difficult.
Government officials say the train system is a practical solution to help residents cope with rising costs, and trains can serve more people than buses.
The intention primarily is for His Excellency to find alternative options for transportation within the city center to assuage the pains and agony, if it's the right word to use.
Look at the volume of the passenger we are carrying. A bus cannot pick it even if it runs for like 10 times daily.
Currently operating 4 daily trips, the rail system may soon expand to rural zones to help farmers transport produce. Officials say more track repairs are underway to increase coverage and support local economic activity.
At least 15 people have died and dozens have been displaced in Guinea's capital, Conakry, after weeks of heavy rains triggered widespread flooding. Emergency workers and volunteers are clearing debris and searching for the missing. Authorities say the situation highlights the urgency of modernizing the city's aging infrastructure and drainage systems.
Torrential rains pounding Guinea since late June have left 15 dead and forced over 50 families into shelters, with 138 homes damaged across Conakry, according to emergency officials. Blocked waterways, poor drainage and collapsing infrastructure are worsening the impact. Volunteers say they are working to recover missing persons and reopen roads.
Our country is experiencing torrential rain, so there have been many missing people and many blocked roads. Our goal is to help local communities and the administration clear these different infrastructures, but also help find bodies. That's why since yesterday we have been working on the Kabaya Bridge, and today we are at the Fossadet Bridge to help in this way.
Red Cross emergency workers say they are motivated to retrieve the bodies of flood victims.
We don't know yet in what circumstances the body was found, only as an emergency rescue organisation. That's the reason we're motivated to retrieve the body from this landing stage. So that's a bit of it. We accompanied the body with the population and relatives, so we are already at Kabaya at this mosque to deposit the body at the mosque morgue.
As Guinea braces for the peak of its rainy season, officials have promised faster upgrades to drainage networks and relocation from high-risk zones. But with more rain forecast, residents say immediate action is critical to prevent further tragedy.
Conditions are rapidly deteriorating in Al-Fashir, Sudan, as the Rapid Support Forces tighten their siege on the last army-controlled city in Darfur. Residents say they face constant bombardment, rising hunger and attacks while fleeing. Meantime, aid groups warn of cholera outbreaks in overcrowded camps where food, water and shelter are in critically short supply.
Hundreds of thousands are trapped in Sudan's Al-Fashir, where a prolonged RSF siege has cut off food, water and aid, triggering famine and mass displacement across the Darfur region. According to reports, soaring violence and collapsed infrastructure are worsening hunger and disease. Residents say they are forced to live in unsanitary conditions under constant rain with no shelter or medicine.
Until now, my husband, the father of my children, has not come from Al-Fashir. I took the children and left with my family. We have families that we could not find. We came to Tawila. After we arrived at Tawila, the organisation gave us some simple things, but that's not enough. There is a lot of rain now, and the cholera disease is coming. I hope they would try and provide us with medications. We don't have houses to protect us from the rain, and we don't have tarps. We have to wait for the rain to stop for the children to sleep. There are no tarps or mosquito nets. We don't have covers, and the fall is coming.
The RSF made us flee from Zamzam camp. We went back to Shagra, village close to Al-Fashir in North Darfur, so that we can flee and go to Tawila. The RSF attacked us again in Shagra. They exhausted us so much. They told us, "Where are the weapons? Where are the men? You are slaves."
Aid agencies say Tawila's population has surged past capacity, with nearly 90% lacking clean water or toilets. With heavy rains ongoing and no ceasefire in sight, the risk of wider outbreaks and mass starvation continues to grow.
South Africa has announced emergency measures to support exporters facing a new 30% US tariff, which takes effect this week. Officials say the tariff could cost tens of thousands of jobs, particularly in agriculture and manufacturing. Efforts to strike a deal with Washington have so far failed, despite Pretoria offering $3.3 billion investments to the US.
South Africa is offering financial support and regulatory exemptions to local firms facing a 30% tariff from the US after failed efforts to reach a trade deal. The move follows new tariffs imposed by US President Donald Trump, which South African officials warn could devastate local industries and cost thousands of jobs. Officials say the US remains a critical trade partner, and South Africa is committed to value-added trade over extractive arrangements.
The US is South Africa's third biggest trading partner, with the European Union and China being the first and second largest trading partners. The US accounts for 7.5% of our global exports. Thus, we will continue to engage the US with a view to conclude a deal that advances the interests of both countries. South Africa seeks to conclude deals that promote value addition and industrialization, rather than extractive relations that deprive the country of the ability to beneficiate our mineral wealth by mimicking extractive colonial-era trade relations. We are talking about the livelihoods and jobs of people that are at stake. So that's why we're focused on the ball, on the negotiations, on the framework, and we did not want to focus on the speculations, whether it's because of a BEE or affirmative action or any other politics that has not been brought to the negotiation table. So we focus on what we have presented to the US government, and we believe we're dealing with that.
Cabinet is expected to finalise additional relief measures this week as businesses brace for the tariff's impact. Pretoria says its trade policy will remain anchored in industrial development and bilateral cooperation.
But that's all we have today in Africa News. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.